Okay, good afternoon everybody, thank you very much for coming. I'm very pleased to introduce our panel. We're going to be here for 3/4 of an hour talking about some of those wider trends of welfare in the industry, and I'm very pleased to introduce Philippa who's the head of Vector. Andy Rowley is the Executive Director of the SMA, Stage Managers Association. Giverny Masso is a reporter for The Stage and recently wrote about the working conditions of workers backstage, and we're going to kick off with you in a second. And Ollie Brown is the head of production and tech at Whole Truck, who have recently started looking at their production schedules and how they might make that a little bit more balanced with people's work life aspirations. So if I could get you to kick off. Yeah, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, so I guess in the past there's been a lot written about kind of performers working conditions, but actually the people that bear the real kind of brunt of this is obviously everyone that is working backstage. And I recently did a front page that was looking at speaking to various unions and individuals, looking at how these excessively working hours are kind of leading to burnout and serious mental health issues amongst a lot of workers. And this was actually kick-started by the Association of Lighting Designers came to me, and they said this is actually a huge issue that is, it's been going on for ages. It's nothing new. It's not kind of revolutionary, but it hasn't really been talked about in the open that much. So I spoke to so many different people, and there were some common issues that kind of came out of this. And that was firstly the long hours working culture. And there are various reports of 60-hour working weeks in some cases, long shifts of up to 13 hours, which I'm sure most of you have probably experienced yourself. So that was kind of one issue. The other issue was sometimes working conditions, so there wasn't the same kind of health and safety support you might get in an office. So if you're a programmer, you might be hunched over your equipment for hours and hours, and no one's kind of done an assessment to make sure that that's safe, so that's kind of adding to that. And then also like the increased stresses of the pressure of putting together a production with more and more complicated equipment, but kind of not a longer time scale to do that, so you're often forced to work these long shifts to actually just get the amount of work done. So those were kind of the main overall. And the other thing as well was buyout contracts as well, which is, I think from my understanding, is where all your overtime is kind of paid right at the beginning, so you kind of work as many hours as are needed, without, which also kind of leads to burnout. So these are kind of the main issues that came out of this. I can kind of go through, so I spoke to the Association of Lighting Designers, the Association of Sound Designers, Beck, who you'll hear more from in a sec, and Andy, who you'll also hear more from, so I leave you guys to do your bit. But some of the main points that came out of each of the other organisations that I spoke to, so the ALD, they were saying lighting programmers in particular really bear the brunt of this, because they're the ones that are there with this really, equipment's getting more and more complicated. Yeah, there's not these kind of schedules to deal with that, so there's a lot more pressure. They'll often be working 15 to 18-hour days, which is leading to these issues. And sometimes at the end of the technical week, they're often unable to function because of the pressure that they've been through before, which is really unacceptable. And the industry needs to find a way to kind of completely rethink how it's structuring its shows, because this is affecting so many people's personal lives. And then Dominic from the Association of Sound Designers said that 60-hour working weeks are really common. Often sound designers or people in sound have to work on multiple different shows in order to earn enough money to make a living, which again is just adding to this pressure. And he actually, when I wrote to him for comment, he said, we're actually launching this campaign to raise awareness of mental health for people working in sound, which I think they had one of their open meetings here at the show today, which is great. And then Equity also said for stage managers, it's a really similar situation. 48-hour weeks are common despite people being on equity contracts. So I'm sorry to present quite a bleak picture, but those are kind of the main findings. And then people spoke a little bit about, I guess, what could be done. To that, yeah. So I guess there were kind of a few common threads of what could be done to address this. I mean, the most important thing to say is there needs to be a kind of sea change in the industry towards attitudes towards working, making flexible working the kind of standard rather than the exception, because it affects everyone, but it's often parents and carers and people with those responsibilities might be pushed out of the industry because of these working conditions. And then I spoke to other people who have maybe suggested having kind of enforced lunch breaks, which some people might not agree with, but because they just need to get the work done, but also, you know, making sure that people actually have those breaks scheduled. And then just having more kind of rules around, you know, putting into contracts more kind of, I guess, stricter rules about hours, which is, again, really hard because you've got to do the work. But and also pay was the other thing, making sure that the basic pay rate goes up so that people don't have to work as many multiple jobs to make a living and to survive. So those are some of the main findings that came out of it.
So if we're, thank you very much, if we're talking about sort of lack of break and infringements and scheduling, I mean, Andy, would you like to?
Yeah, this is something that stage managers do have a problem with, in common with the programmers, and there are a number of elements to this. It's interesting. Equity talk about 48-hour weeks for stage managers. That's actually the equity contract. That ignores all the buyouts and the extra hours that are put on top. So stage managers are working as in common with our colleagues as technicians across the board backstage, much longer hours than that. I want to talk about the tech for a second, because the programme has raised a really interesting point. We tend to schedule, and I'll say we, because stage managers are involved in scheduling techs, and I'm sure I know PMs are closely involved. We tend to schedule tech around stage time. And although it's not about the director and the stage time is the crucial thing. And we don't tend to give too much thought to the amount of work that goes on off stage. So like for the programmer, the amount of notes you might pick up in a morning of tech, and then you have to pick up in the afternoon and carry on. When are you going to get all those fixes, notes and things? When are you going to get that all put in the board? For stage managers, this is exactly the same problem. When you're going to deal with all those notes, all those things, so you'll end up with huge lists of things to do. And a break just becomes a sandwich and an opportunity to grab a few people and pass on a few notes and communicate some things. So I think part of the issue here, and I just want to say that, you know, this isn't a blame game on anyone's part. This is a culture that we've all inherited. But it's a ship that we can steer. And I think we need to start steering it a little bit. We need to start thinking a little bit more about just that, about some time for doing those soft skills, as we call them in stage management, or the other non-stage related jobs of, you know, doing the fixes and things. Now, you know, obviously when the set needs some fixes, then some time is found on the set, because that's quite crucial. And therefore some time can be found off stage. But it's so often you hear about people working till 1 or 2 at night. You know, when a text, you probably put the kibosh on it at 12, so again, enough is enough. But it isn't enough for a lot of people. They'll be at home on their computers at this stage managers. They'll be taking their mobile kit home if they're lighting people and so on and so forth. So it's that form of welfare. That's something I wanted to raise, because I think that's a really important issue. And it's something that will only come if we all take a bit of ownership for it. And, you know, and actually say, well, we might have to just expand the tech period a little bit longer. We might, you know, take it. This is, I mean, the directors will be screaming now, but take a day or two off rehearsal in order to just start the tech a bit quicker. But of course, there is that other thing that, as we know in the tech, so many directors often want to do a little bit more than tech, don't they? And as stage managers, we have to stop them doing a little bit more than tech. Well, this might be an opportunity to say, well, go off with the cast and run some notes now for the first act, and we'll get on with doing what we do. It's just a bit of thinking. And on behalf of, you know, Pippa and the people with families and the work-life balance thing, it is important that people aren't just taking all their work home. And it's not just text, is it? I mean, it's a lot of time. So that's one very important point I wanted to raise. For stage management, in terms of well-being, and I just want to say team sizes are quite important. And this is something that production managers are aware of, because I know that on smaller scale shows, PMs are often almost operating as part of the SMT, as one or other of the members of the team disappear. So that 3-person team is becoming a little bit less, or 4 if it's a bigger show. I think that's something that worries stage managers a little bit, because there's an awful lot of multi-skilling goes on there, and that just means poorer welfare, more missed breaks, and so on. And I've got a few other bits and pieces, but I'll leave it there for now. Silly enough.
thoughts about that, maybe understaffing and sort of that paring to the bone, where you really...
Yeah, so I think you're probably going to hear a lot of similar themes here, but I would agree with much of what's been said, and I think maybe we need to sort of start thinking outside the box and try and modernise some of the agreements and working arrangements that currently happen in theatres, because our members equally report long hours, not having sufficient breaks, working in theatre becoming almost impossible if they have children and want to work more flexibly. So we're really keen, I think, to make sure that we do modernise those workplaces, that we do make sure that working hours are manageable, and that people do have good facilities at work, but also that theatres become more diverse as well, so that they're more family friendly, there's more flexible working, and of course pay is an issue, because if people feel that they have to work those long hours in order to make a living wage, then they will do that, won't they? They don't have a choice.
Yeah, and I think the lack of diversity is triggered by these excessively long hours. Anybody that has caring responsibilities is going to find it very, very hard to stay in the industry. There's no flexibility for that. There's not even a lunch hour to go and make a personal phone call half the time, because we were talking about using your lunch hours for notes and corrections and dealing with pastoral welfare and all that stuff. The other thing that I thought it would be worth mentioning, this is something that all production managers are obviously very, very focused on, is the health and safety of everybody at work. So it's health and safety and welfare, obviously, it's all three. So let's not also forget some of those conditions we were talking a little bit earlier, weren't we, about the physical working conditions, and you touched on just then, sort of saying, where you're going to have a break. You're eating you're not eating at a table, you're eating from a flight case, backstage, in the dark, maybe you've got 10 minutes, you're at a stage manager's, a DSM desk which isn't ergonomically built fit for purpose. You're programming on probably one of the theatre seats on a table that's been kind of half-assed put together and balanced over some seats in front of you, and it's not comfortable. So yes, maybe we could expand a little bit on those kind of things, the physical working positions that would not be acceptable in our case.
Well, I always say to stage managers when I meet them, so how about, what does this mean to you? So there's a quiet week behind a black flight and a sandwich. And that's a break for a stage manager. That's a kind of, grabbing a bit of moment, hiding behind somewhere black on the set. I mean, you guys are the same, I don't mean to make this, I represent stage managers, but production managers are you're some of the hardest working of the lot, because you're never off. You're always the one that our members have to go and collar in the breaks. So we have a lot of that in common, in fact. And together we need to sort of solve this. One of the interesting things, and this is probably as relevant to PMs to some extent as stage managers, we just started doing some work on SM desks, prom desks. Now everybody knows them, they've been in theatre since the 30s or something. They've been there, everybody knows. And we just started inquiring into the design and ergonomics of them, partly with ABTT technical standards. So we've all known them, we've all seen them. People from Equity have said to me, I've been going into theatres for 15 years and nobody's ever made a complaint. Then we get an osteopath in and he says, well, all this reaching and stretching and pulling and, seats that don't adjust, and it's just terrible. Then we get a health and safety person in and says, well, this contradicts everything in DSE. Everything. They're tall, the little stage managers, and we've got a lot of little stage managers, very, very good DSMs. They put biscuit tins and tins under their feet because they can't stand up and reach it. Their colleagues who rig the desks need extra monitors. They find a couple of old monitors from the stores and bring them up with gaffer tape on top. So the things like the Leaning Tower of Pisa are up there. So they're reaching up, the comms are over there somewhere. You're standing by for a legs queue and they can hardly reach it, and they're tense and their back's tensing. And then there's a flies queue and they're looking around just to see if the flies go, so that the whole body's going like that. And it can be solved. We've had the manufacturers in, these things can all be solved. And a lot of PMs are in the same position. We walk around the stage and there are lots of things we see every day that aren't really that great. They're not really that great for welfare. And in the meeting the other day among stage managers, we just finished towards the end, and I suddenly caught all the stage managers in the room. It wasn't about health and safety and compliance. They were all discussing back pain. They were all comparing osteopaths and talking about injuries. This isn't right. We cannot be, as a professional association, employing all these people who just go to work purely so that, you know. There's a lovely guy, Peter McCoy, who's written a book on stage management, who knows much. He said, I remember stage management, two things: the wonderful thing of running a show and a life of going to an osteopath at the end of every one and having my back put back together again. And I only mention this not because stage managers are bleating about it, and not because we want some wonderful flight deck, you know, from out of your budgets, but because it isn't in anyone's budgets and it isn't on anyone's radar, and it's one of those silly little things, like maybe all those desks at the tech, which are just bits of wood flung over chairs, which nobody, you know, that we perhaps ought to look at occasionally and think, are these really fit for purpose? When a tech is now what? How long? 6 days long sometimes, a tech? That's quite a long time. It's a long time to be sitting as a non-economic on a chair. Stage managers say the chair that came with the front desk has always been knit years ago. So there's now a little IKEA stool. If you remember seeing, whenever by the front desk, there's just a little stool that's no good to anyone, or a little chair or something. So all those little things. And I'm talking about, so just to be clear, you know, physical injuries. And injuries that if it were a cast, the producers would be paying for osteopaths and physiotherapists, and do pay. A lot of work was changing budgets like that. So these matter, really. But as I say, we're very keen in stage management to, we work with everybody on the team. We couldn't do our job without the team. So it's a position we're all in. But it is a question of just looking around a little bit more. And it is a question of maybe just developing some small budget heads for things that we take for granted.
I work at Sanders Wells, it's receiving house. We have about 50 different companies a year coming, and we have our own front desk with an adjustable chair. But still, but it's made me think I need to go back and have a look at that, because there'll be 2 companies a year, maybe 2, maybe 1, that will actually bring their own front desk that's been built with that DSM in mind, where it's the monitors are the exact number that they need, not one bolted on top, the exact number that they need right in their eye line. Maybe 2 a year.
Yeah.
And even if it's just touring a chair and making sure you tour small monitors and small, you know, making sure you've got the kit and you're not scrabbling together with whatever the house has. Yes, you're right, it can be a small budget just to take the basics with you, but you know that you can make it work for the DSM as well.
Well, we had the corporate authors who do touring kits, and they also say a lot of the touring kit is really badly designed as well.
Yeah.
Sorry, one last thing. If at a production meeting or on a rider, it just said a few things about the basic standards of what was required.
I have never, ever, I've been technical director for 10 years, never seen that on a rider. Never seen any provision for stage
It was the first time.
But, you know, and we do touring shows, so that's something I need to take away and think
And you're
about.
something
What
else.
touring riders.
Imagine what the worst does.
So, you talked a little bit about changing working practice and contracts and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And Ollie, you're looking at a change to the tech schedule, aren't you, at the moment? And
Yeah.
how's that working?
Yeah, so like, I mean, it sounds like a really small change in that we're just trying to avoid working in the evening. And it all we kind of started out as a partner with Philippa, and we're kind of like we're a partner organisation with Philippa. So we started out by looking at how we can kind of benefit parents within the organisation, which started a much bigger conversation around office staff, through backstage staff, through to creatives, visiting companies, and so on. And so I have to say, like, we are looking at lots of different things, and we're trying to do what we can. We're not getting anything perfect, we're not getting anything complete right, but we're definitely trying to go in the right direction, focusing on people's well-being. And so we now run tech schedules for the majority of our shows from 10 a.m. through to 6 p.m. With kind of cold cutting off at 6. Yes, that means we can then make allowances for notes if needs be. It means we can make allowances for stage management for doing their kind of doing notes, and also it gives them programming time. It means that when things do come up and they do go wrong, we can then fix them without cutting into as much tech time. The biggest thing it avoids is those kind of we've all been where tech finishes at 10, then we go, we're just going to have to get this done. We kind of carry on till 1, 2 in the morning. That just doesn't happen. And again, I think a lot of this comes from a culture, and I think it's about culture coming from the top down. And I kind of was in the Pippa group earlier, and it was listening to people talk, and it was quite clear in organisations that maybe a lot of organisations don't have a senior manager in a production department, a member of the production department as a senior manager, and all of a sudden, you're not getting that element of the culture isn't being influenced. So you're kind of fighting a losing battle. So you have to have a culture of well-being across the organisation at the senior management level for it to do anything. So once you've got that, we can then make compromises with the producer to say, okay, it means we might have to tech for longer, but actually we're going to end up not actually going into overtime with the casts and stage management, and we're going to save lots of money that way. Or it might be trying to work out different ways of programming over a production build, so we can still get some income from that side. But yeah, again, it's all about culture.
I think there's huge financial imperatives, obviously, in the theatre industry, and everybody tries to pare everything to the bone. We've made it work so far, so there's no reason why we shouldn't carry on making it work. So there's always, it's going to be very, very difficult to get that sea change at the top, because obviously they've got their pressures as well, I've got their pressures as well. In terms of sort of the change to contracts, what are your aspirations?
Yeah, so I suppose from our members' point of view, we're seeing an increased casualisation in the workforce, which means not only that people are having to work 2 or 3 jobs to make a living, but also it means that if they're seeing something that maybe they would want to call out, like a health and safety issue or any sort of bullying and harassment at work, that they just don't feel secure enough to be able to do that. So I guess we would like to see more permanent contracts. I guess we'd like to see contracts which pay better for the working normal hours through the day, and therefore people aren't relying on overtime and premium payments all the time, and obviously some more flexibility. But I do agree that absolutely comes from the top of the organisation, and where you see that commitment to modernise and improve things. We're working particularly well with the E&O at the moment. They're doing lots of stuff that in partnership with us, which is making a real improvement for our members in the workplace.
I think it's really good point about more full-time contracts, because if you are absolutely prepared to the bone, one person goes downstairs, and I bet there's not one person in this room that has not gone into work critically sick, crying up in a bucket, shaking with fever, because if you don't go in, it's not going to happen. And that happens all over. It's normal, isn't it, in the industry?
It is normal, but again, that's because a culture has been allowed to create that. Actually, I'm not going to go into details, but a member of my staff, who back to I hadn't known that they weren't particularly well, came up to me at the end of the matinee going, I just cannot, I have to go. And actually, at that point, I was like, why have you not come today? Why haven't you spoken to me? You did not need to be in here. We were talking, I was just talking earlier about, there's a real sense of martyrdom in our industry. There's a bit of we just do it because the show is it and that's it, and we're going to carry on, and nothing's going to stop us. And actually, it can't be that. We need to, and people need to know to look after themselves. And I think there is also elsewhere maybe some cultures that are not as supportive. And actually, we as kind of the people employing this staff, we need to show that we've got really supportive. We're supportive of their well-being, so they feel like they can come and say, I just can't, because nothing's insurmountable. Nothing, and no one's irreplaceable. We can move on, we can manage this kind of thing if people are like, yeah, okay, I'm not well, I need to be off.
And we also need to pay attention to our own mental well health, and we also need to be setting a good example. We also, as production managers and technical directors for everything, to be saying, no, we're stopping, we're all stopping.
Yeah.
I'm stopping as well. I'm going to stop for lunch. I'm not going to go, well, I'm off to my office, it's quite important, I'm going to carry on working. Yeah, we need to be setting better examples as well.
Straight on.
Can I just pick up on this, the bosses thing? I'm going to mention names because Jess Gow was with us yesterday. She's a DSM for long standing. She's done her baby. She blogs, you might know her, just a girl in the dark. She talked about having a baby and she's driven as a stage manager at DSM. She carried on. But one of the things she managed to do was talk to her bosses about negotiating 1 day off a week on her contracts as a DSM. Now that meant they had to start with an ASM cover fully worked into the show from the top. Now that's quite interesting because then Jess did get ill and had to have some time off. From a management point of view, at an early stage in the production, that can be a crisis because you know lack of cover is a big issue. They were all set to go. They brought in a couple of decks to cover the other tracks. The ASM would cover the track. You know, this is actually can be sold to management because this is in their interests. Show stops are not in their interests. Not being able to cover a show is not in anyone's interest. And Jess managed to effectively save them a real problem by what she did. And you know, we can cover. And I say this from the point of view of DSMs who are the last people to want to share their jobs. Oh, my God, it's my job. You know, and so we have a job to do persuading our own staff to do this. But you know, it can be sold to management. And you know, Ollie's case is a really interesting one. So reschedule the text, all that work that gets done at midnight with a heavy sigh because you've spent hours just fiddling around on things that, you know, aren't quite working all day. You've got an evening to sort them out. And one of Ollie's stage managers got highly commended for a massive show, and our awards is there. So the quality isn't changing either. You know, it's probably getting better actually. It's probably making the capacity to make a big show better. So it can be sold. And I think we all have to just take a step back and think, and sort of slightly passionately, get our passionate, you know, enthusiastic heads back on, and go to management, no, look, trust me, we can make this work. You know, because it can be better.
I was thinking about this last night as well, and I was thinking that we live in we're in a very, very privileged environment. We live in a very privileged country. We have enormous amount of freedom. We have, and we see people at 5 o'clock on the train going to work in the morning doing two jobs trying to keep things going. We see teachers who are hideously overworked, health service workers hideously overworked. We're not alone in this by any means. However, for all of those jobs, it's a bad thing. But our jobs, it's normal. It's more than normal. It's laudable. It's a badge of honour. It's something admirable. We've got bragging rights. We do it. Our staff do it. Our bosses do it. God, it's a hard week, wasn't it? God, 85 hours. Oh, show must go on. And we take pride in this. We all do it sometimes. And yes, sometimes it is extraordinary. There's amazing adrenaline. We have these amazing experiences. We're very, very lucky. But it takes a toll after years and years and years and years and years of this. It takes a toll. You cannot process that much adrenaline every week without your body, without affecting your health, your physical health and mental well-being. And we've all seen people in crisis. I think at the moment the industry is looking at, you know, well, most organisations have got some kind of mental health crisis at all. But also what people that I'm talking to are saying, I'm sure that you're talking to, are saying we don't want to have free yoga lessons and a mental health helpline. We'd like to not get to that place in the first place. We're not here to point of crisis in the first place. And so it's about changing that viewpoint, isn't it? That sea change into changing this isn't normal. This is not a normal way of working for the rest of the world.
I think there's a massive amount as production managers we need to do to manage expectations and manage ambition. And it's brilliant that we have these incredibly huge, ambitious production. But actually, if to achieve that means that we have to infringe on night breaks, it means we have to work ourselves to the bone, to the breaking point, then there has to be a point where as production managers would say, right, either we need an injection of more cash so that we can get multiple teams working. And I know, particularly lighting programmers, I'm saying this as an ex-lighting programmer, I never want anyone else to take up on my desk and start programming whilst I go. But actually, if that is what is needed and we need to do multiple crews to manage that, I really strongly believe in that. I'm saying this from working, from kind of managing a team in Hull, where it's impossible to get staff to, but there are always people that we can kind of break shifts down into kind of, if that's what it needs. But what we can't do is continue on doing 16, 17-hour days. It just can't happen.
It's the 11-hour and the lunchtime is the bare minimum. It's the lowest bar. It's not, it's 11 hours gives you enough time to travel around, eat, wash, sleep, come back, do it again. You don't get to you don't get to go for a run, you don't get to see the kids, you don't get to do anything. It's the absolute bare minimum, but it's infringed all the time, isn't it? It seems the starting point, not the absolute.
That culture, that's the culture that comes from the top down. As long as an organisation has that representative on the SMT, they can manage that. Like we, since I started at Hull, I don't think we've infringed once. Well, no, it's not about that. It's just about being incredibly strict.
So it's about managing up as well as managing down.
Yeah. From my point of view, it's about managing up and going. Actually, granted, maybe the scale of our shows is not the scale of other others, but I think it's managing it's just managing a smaller team to achieve it. But it is the only times that unfortunately people maybe sometimes do miss a break. Actually, it's the visiting company one-nighters that they miss their dinner break because it's just but they still I'm still strict on trying to get at least a minimum of 20 minutes of the working time directed, which is not good enough because they need to have full rest out. But overnight breaks we've not infringed since I've started.
So, I just wanted to quickly make a couple of points and just say obviously my article picked up on very specific examples, but the consensus was that this is across the board with all people working in technical and production areas. So, and I also want to say as well, obviously I don't work in production, but as a journalist, I think there's a lot of parallels with that idea of you love your job so much that you've got, not at the stage, but with my other friends I've definitely honestly not at the stage, but coming from where I worked before, which I won't name, but coming from there to the stage, I'm speaking to other kind of friends working in journalism. It is that idea that you love your job so much that you should be prepared to put in these hours. And I think the other thing is the whole stigma around talking about mental health means that when you are suffering in that aspect, it's so much harder to take some time off work because it's not, you can't see it as obviously as if you're physically ill. And I think that still needs to really be broken down. There's a lot of work being done around that, but there's still so much further to go that someone can actually feel comfortable to say, just because they appear fine on the outside, to feel comfortable to go up to their boss and say, actually, I'm not okay, I need some time off work, and to feel empowered enough to do that.
And I think also everybody in this room is going to be in a position of I've had mental health issues in the past, I've had depression in the past. I'm empathetic with my staff, I understand when I see that happen to them. I'm not trained, but I can see it and I can empathise, but and that's fortunate. But I'm not trained, and I think what we also need to be thinking about is this not all going up and doing mental health first aid, but actually a kind of culture. I don't know what you feel about the culture of everybody being much more informed and much more aware of what to look out for and how to support their teams. And that's hard with your freelancers, isn't it? You can't pay yourself to go off and do courses and hope the best, and putting it on your CV isn't going to get you another job either. But it's something that you're going to be seeing all the time, probably with staff, I would imagine as well. So why now? Why are we talking about this now? We always talked about this. We always talked about the culture backstage, or is there a reason that there's a shift? There's a lot of forums throughout these 2 days talking about various aspects around mental health and wellbeing. Why is it happening now?
it's happening now because there is more of a debate in society more generally about mental health and stress and non-working hours, those sorts of things. But also, you know, it's really encouraging to me to hear about people being creative around working hours and just really thinking outside the box. Because I think a lot of people are frightened about, you know, making change and is it going to work, or things going to fall through the cracks or whatever. So I really think that we need to push that forward and try and encourage people to be a bit more creative about how they manage their workforce and be more encouraging in terms of diversity and so on. So yeah, I think it's probably a bit of a cultural change, but I'm very pleased to see that we're all talking about it now.
I think we all need to take pride in our professionalism. I think at a time of diminishing resources, when producers are using the argument that you can't have 2, 3 stage managers, you can only have 2, you know, we're not made of money, there's no money for shows anymore, you'll have to double up, you know. We all need to take pride in what we do, and we need to just figure out how we can do that effectively. I mean, Ollie's quite right, and I don't have to tell you guys, it's judgments you make every day, but it's the scale of the project against the scale of the resources that's going to cause the problem. And it's that little word no that our stage managers often aren't very good at, and other people, like, you know, no to a director who wants to work on in a break means a whole string of infringements that is following on from that. So we all have to do that. And I believe personally, you know, a certain kind of adrenaline or stress is what gets all our shows on. But the lack of resources versus the need to do things is what causes the kind of stress that you're talking about, we're talking about. I've had mental health issues in my family, I've had times when I've had anxiety myself. And that's what causes it. It's an overload of work and pressure against an underload of money and resources and time. So we all need to get very professional, we all need to stand up for what we need, I think, and we need to look to people like Ollie and more examples like this and say, no, let's be brave. Let's do a couple of big things. Let's afford 3 stage managers. The ASM's only going to cost what a moving light costs anyway. And let's do the job. Sorry, lighting guys. But we are. Our ASMs, you know, they know. But, you know, put money into resources like that. And, you know, at the end of the day, focus on making good shows better by being focused and well made, and as equity say, professionally made. And I think we'll all be the better for it. And I think one of the reasons it is coming up now is because the resources are lower and fewer. And I think we're all hearing from above that we're having to pare back and whatnot and whatnot. But that has to be done in a very professional way, you know. And you know, let's face it, it's a lot cheaper for the writer to cross something out of the pen than it is for us to get to the tech and try and sort it.
And something I mentioned earlier about technology increasing and things becoming more complex, and programming becoming more complex, and all of this has made a difference too. It's not so easy to do any of these jobs now. You know, you have automation on the show. It's a much more complex thing, and it's harder finding staff to cover those specialisations. Mental health is discussed greatly, obviously, in society at large, but also I think we have different expectations now, maybe for quality of life. We have different expectations of how we want to live our lives. And I'm looking at young people coming out from school, so I gave a talk to some young people recently, and I said, oh, you know, go on festivals, do what you can, and one of them put their hand up and said, we've been told we should never work for free. I went, yeah, good point. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You're absolutely, yeah, you're right there. And to a certain extent, we will always go to work on festivals for free when we're 18 because we get a ticket and it's great. But that was, there's been a kickback, hasn't there, in the industry against those kinds of internships, unpaid internships. And that is a death knell to diversity as well. We spent 6 12-month internships around the dispute. So yes, we are looking differently. Young people coming through looking differently about what their aspirations for work in life are, and they are not being bitter 15 to 18 hours a day. There's a life outside and people want to go life outside. So yes, I suppose it's if anybody's got we've got a few minutes, who wants to stick their hand up, please do. But I think it's incumbent on us, isn't it, as well, you and I are technical directors and all of the wonderful production managers, to support one another in that process and try and find ways that we can push up and feed down a lot better in terms of the conditions that we offer to people to work for us. Then would you get any thoughts that you want to comment?
Steve O'Brien, freelance production manager. I used to work at the New Vickers, Susie to vote from. But just a couple of thoughts. I think Andy's point about the fact that as an industry we're not very good at saying no is spot on. I remember a very long time ago in the days when the ABTT used to have a health and safety conference every year hosted by Kevin Sivyer at the RSC. One of the things he said, one of the very first ones of those was, we're actually rubbish at saying no. The more often we say no, the more quickly the message about health and safety will get through. And here we are 20 years down the line, and health and safety is something that we all do as a matter of course. So I think, yeah, a bit more of maybe saying no to conference is true. And the other thing is, a long time ago, I took some shows to Japan and China, and as a matter of course, they do a crew changeover, and it frankly scared the out of us. We put the show in, the show had been plotted, set up, and halfway through the day, the local crew changed over, but the show in the evening was flawless, because that's the way they work. So it is possible, it's just that the culture in the UK is very different.
I've seen that happen in Holland as well. 4 o'clock in the afternoon is called crew change. And it works well.
Yeah.
There's a proper 2-hour handover. There's a proper overlap, not just a quick 10 minutes. That's like the statutory. It works.
I think it's interesting drawing back on your points about mental health first aid training. I as a freelancer, surrounded myself to go and get some mental health first aid training and did the 2-day course and found it really enlightening. I suffer with mental health, and also I find it really interesting is that 2 people on the panel, as I'm sure other people who had an open discussion about it would say, I've suffered with mental health issues recently. Is that 5 years ago, I doubt we all had the same attitude.
Yeah.
The media, the response to the media recently has changed it massively. And also, the Me Too campaign, everything has started and driven that ball forward. The ball has rolled, started rolling, and it's going to be hard to stop it.
And I think maybe that's one of the takeaways from today, isn't it? It's the driver behind all of this is yes, we can get it on, we can, work as we've always done for the last 50 or 100 years, but actually the entire country is talking about mental health, then, we'd like to be included in that conversation.
But you said earlier we used to go to the pub at lunchtime every day. We used to do all sorts of things we don't do now. It's risk assessment. We thought we'd never get a show on if we had to do a risk assessment. Well, we're doing it all. So this is all coming.
It's interesting you saying mental health first aid awareness. I think, you haven't done a course. I didn't see, the majority of us, I didn't actually see having done it, is I didn't learn anything that I hadn't done before. Admittedly, it approached you at a different angle. But the majority of the content, of course, we already know because we're dealing with these people day in, day out.
We just talked at work recently, our HR manager came, it was in our health and safety team, she said, well, we've got so many people who are first aid trained for mental health. Do we want to do another 5 people? We're over 150 employees. Or do we want to actually use that money and do like all the managers in a kind of general briefing? And we're like, yeah, let's do that. Because I know I'm not going to go and seek out one of those 5. I'm going to go to state and check the names and go and talk to them. I'm not going to do that at the moment of crisis. But it would be great if every manager can keep their eyes on them. So it doesn't even need to be as stringent as the 2-day course, does it? It needs to be.
The half-day one, and looking at I've now moved away from this so much and moved into the events industry, I'm the only one out of the company of 40 who has any mental health first aid training.
And how many people have got first aid?
First aid training, all full-time staff.
Yeah.
And I find it amazing is how people, the number of illnesses this week alone due to problems as it's become registered is outstanding. It's mind-blowing in comparison to what would be normal in theatre.
But it does feel like a positive change, isn't it? 5 years ago we didn't have mental health first aid training. Now every year we're talking about putting people through that training.
I was in an ASD thing about welfare and mental health first aid, and the guy that was talking there said that in January there was legislation passed for company house. So he same as having a first aid in the building, it's the same.
Just to riff on that, Rose Bruford are actually running a course very soon. The details were put on our social media, so you can check out there if anybody wants to do mental health first aid training. There's going to be a course very soon.
Yeah, that's with Passive Tool, and that's specifically for production and stage managers. So we are the people, I'd say we, the production managers, and especially company managers, are the people who tend to be the people who come to, company managers with the actors especially, but PMs will plot it with the stage management and the crews. And you know, that cup of coffee moment when you have to go and take someone aside and just have a chat, that is what we're talking about here often. And really the need is for receiving mental health issues, in the sense the need is for training people to actually cope with spotting the issues. The mental health first aid is a very good start there, because it does run through all those bases.
It's also a form of protecting ourselves, because we can all empathise and maybe got some problem, but it will take it out. So having the training will, you know, enable you to cope, give you the resilience. It's about having resilience, isn't it?
Just one final thing, so we'll put out after this, there's a couple of resources that are free and if anyone wants to share. There's the theatre helpline, which is essentially a 24-hour service that people can talk openly and confidentially about anything that they're struggling with, physical or mental health wise. And also, there was another one.
Just think about this.
Yeah.
One more question, please.
I just think we should also address the difference between freelance production managers and people who actually already work at an institution. We talked about places, organisations that have union representation and things like that will very much support those production managers. I know when I've scheduled technical rehearsals and things like that, I've worked ridiculous hours. You know, I've worked at the National and finished at 12:30 at night, went home for an hour, slept for 2 hours, got back on the first train back to the National, and probably did that consecutively for a few days. It wasn't that the support wasn't there, it was just that you're actually trying to get the job done. But as a freelance production manager, it's knowing that if you don't deliver the job, next time somebody else will. So if you ask for an extra day of tech to a small production, they can say, we haven't got the money, we've only got theatre for this number of days, we've got to get some ticket money in. So it's great to talk about what we need to do, we know what we need to do, but actually that's got to come from producers, that's got to come from
Absolutely,
companies.
and I think maybe a takeaway for this, for all of you that are freelance production managers, is for those of us that are in institutions, organisations like I and myself, for example, and our professional organisations, is for us to do some of that heavy lifting, so that we're not just getting the person that we know and just abusing their rights to get this thing that we want to get on. We need to make ourselves better as producers and producer houses.
A lot of theatre companies are coming to Pippa though, and they're hearing this stuff as well. I mean, they're learning from. So I think part of it is in the way that we plan productions. That, you know, it's too late to say something like a day before the show opens. The same way when a season's planned, we need to start talking about these things then. Are we really going to be able to cope with that? Is there a slack day or two here or there? Is there some way we can get over that lump? Because in a season of 4 or 5 shows, there's going to be a lumpy one, isn't there? There's going to be that famous all-nighter tech and all that, you know. And it's that sort of planning as well. And I think we all need to just put that on the table a little bit more.
And I think when you're at an experience level, that's okay. Like when maybe it's the students coming through and the people coming through who are trying desperately to get that first job. And you know, we talked about job adverts that are out there. You'll look at an advert in for a proper production, and it will say it's 40 hours a week and any other hours that may be required to do the job. And that's what they're asking to sign away. Or we talk about Edinburgh Fringe, and I know they are making changes, but only yesterday I read an advert for a well-established venue that was asking for volunteer technicians for the whole season, and they were getting no money. And it was, you know, it's there on social media. We're sharing these positions. So do we need to actually start looking at what we're sharing? Is that actually a job?
We need to name and shame of it, don't we?
Is it experience?
Even those who are in a position where they don't have the power, I think we need to make sure that you all still have a voice, and that we listen in professional organisations and professional bodies rather, and venues and producing houses, and that we actually listen and we keep those, which is why things like Production Managers Forum hopefully will kind of keep that flow of information going. And the more you push us and go, this isn't good enough, I just have a contract with your company. you should be able to say that, and we should be able to say that.
And share with us too, because almost all of our members are freelance, almost all. And they typically walk in and all these decisions are made and they just have to mop up, pick up the pieces. And if, thank God we're working for Rowley, it's been thought about, but otherwise, you guys can do that. But so share with us, and I'm sure you've got a sizable number of freelancers already.
Yes,
Yeah. So we need to share, as you say, we need to share, and we need to be prepared to stand for a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I agree with you.
And those of us that got the authority and positions and the, and the unions, we need to be fighting the fight and we need to be saying what we want. Okay.
So that one, it was just going on back on John's first one.
No break time.
As production managers, we'll try and write schedules and things that look after everyone on there. We'll put in the overnight breaks. We'll make sure people are taking their lunch breaks. But then it still goes back to that, we'll work till 11, and as a production manager, everyone else has gone home, and then in the morning, we'll come in at 7:30 to meet the carpenters. And everyone else on that team who's worked till 11 o'clock that night has got their 11-hour overnight break, and we're not looking after ourselves.
Yeah.
I must admit on Oliver Twist, I'm the only one in my team that actually, I did infringe one night, and I walked in and my artistic director told me off, sent me to his office and told me I had to go and sleep on his sofa.
Because you're right, you're martyrs, because you're going to work the early shift, the late shift and the very late shift because you're in charge of everybody, so it is really important to think about that.
And where's the support for if a production manager is dealing with a mental health issue? Where do you go? Is that outlined when you get your contract? I think that also needs to be a consideration.
And maybe that is something that starts going into those freelance contracts as well.
We'd like to see that in the way that first aid should be recognised more as well. But for mental health first aid should as well, and it should be in a contract so that people, managers know we're doing it, staff know we're doing it for that reason. That's a very important thing. I think that would be a very good thing in equity and probably embedded in contracts as well. Yeah.
We're going to wrap up now. Come back in 4 minutes' time. Next exciting installment. So afterwards we're going to have Gary Beanstone, who's here, Gary is production manager of Harry Potter and Person Child International and several other large events and theatre extravaganzas. And Kat is also Kat Rowley, who's a recent graduate of production management degree. And so we've got the youth in the room that will tell us what we're doing. Big proposition of and Ollie's going to stick around as well. So so production managers up at the table after the break. So 5-10 minutes. Go.